Hurricane Center Director Michael Brennan says the impact of Beryl could last for days.
We are seeing reports already of widespread power outages, damage, wind damage occurring in some of the Windward Islands now. Again, heavy rainfall, flash flooding are also possible in these areas. And downstream later this week, we could again see impacts in Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, Yucatan Peninsula, Belize, and elsewhere in the northwestern Caribbean.
Hurricane Beryl made landfall in the Caribbean island of Carriacou. Beryl with top winds of 150 miles per hour, just shy of a Category 5 storm. Hurricane warnings in effect for Barbados, Grenada, Tobago, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. 5 members of a family from Georgia who were visiting Cooperstown, New York for a baseball tournament died when their small plane crashed in the rural part of the state. It happened just after the plane took off from the airport in Oneonta. The Dow is down 1 point, but the NASDAQ ahead 108 now. More at townhall.com.
Government debt is now exploding by an unprecedented $1 trillion every 90 days. Think of that. It's a clear sign that our nation's finances are spinning out of control, and it's putting the savings of every one of you at risk. Hello, I'm Lance Wallnow, a news analyst and best-selling author and an evangelical leader. I'm deeply concerned about the impact this runaway debt is going to have on Christians like you who have worked hard to build your own nest egg for your family. To protect your financial future in these uncertain times, you need to diversify with something tangible and proven, like physical gold. That's why I recommend a gold IRA. To learn more, text FAITH to the number 989898, and my friends at Birch Gold Group will rush you a free info kit on how to move your IRA or 401k to physical precious metals, tax and penalty free. So don't wait. Just text the word FAITH to 989898 to get your free info kit on gold IRAs. Birch Gold Group is the only company I trust. There's no obligation. So text FAITH to 989898, and I pray
This hour of News Talk STL brought to you by Chris Cooper and Serenity Wealth Management. Discover little-known strategies that could be the difference between choosing the care you deserve or having someone else decide it for you. Get a free copy of Chris's book at serenityltc.com. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
Fantastic start to the month of July. Low humidity and cooler than normal temperatures combine for a marvelous Monday under partly cloudy skies. 83 this afternoon. So dropping back into the 70s by 6 or 7 o'clock this evening. Good stuff. Mostly clear overnight. Temperatures bottom out in the low to mid 60s. Hotter air returns tomorrow and humidity nudges upward too. Tuesday's high at 93. Periods of rain and storms expected on the 3rd and 4th of July. Not great timing there. That's your first alert forecast. I'm meteorologist Matt Chambers.
This hour of Colombo and Katie brought to you by Gutter Pros. Water goes where we tell it. Call 314-656-7195 or visit them at gutterpros.com. Tony Colombo.
Libertarianism is all about individual liberty.
Katie Fitzpatrick.
Oh, good for you.
Colombo and Katie on News Talk STL.
Time to rise has been engaged. With better best to rearrange. I'm talking here to me alone. I listen to the finest work song, the finest hour, the finest hour.
I think we should be able to have a civil conversation.
The news and talk that matters to St. Louis.
This conversation has completely made me crazy.
This is complete insanity.
News Talk STL.
Replacing your roof is always a big deal and a big decision. That's why I want you to call my friends, the folks that we've trusted with our homestead, Eureka Contracting and Roofing. 636-938-ROOF. That's 636-938-ROOF. They are veteran-owned, over 30 years of experience in the construction and insurance industry. They'll replace 100% of your roof, siding, fascia, and gutters. They'll come to you with a personal consultation. Give them a call anytime that Mother Nature strikes you. 636-938-ROOF. Available 24/7 at eurekacontracting.com. That's eurekacontracting.com.
Tony Colombo here, reminding you to visit my friends at Bluff City Outdoors in Alton before your next trip into the great outdoors. For decades, Bluff City Outdoors has covered all the needs for area fishermen, and they'll always have all the best bait, tackle, and gear for your next trip on the water. And now they cover all your bow hunting needs, including their state-of-the-art indoor archery range and techno hunt system, open every day for you to come shoot, or you can join a league. Follow Bluff City Outdoors on Facebook and learn more at bluffcityoutdoors.com.
On the next
Larry Connors USA.
It's Monday. We're back in the box, and we got a great program lined up for you. Make sure you're listening. All coming up today.
Larry Connors USA. Now weeknights 6 until 8 on News Talk STL.
So there's a couple things going on with Donald Trump right now in legal cases. A couple things.
Just a few.
There's always something legally going on with Donald Trump. There's the new lawsuits that are being argued in Florida. There's a headline out today about Trump's lawyers are trying to make the case down in this lawsuit in Florida that the Mar-a-Lago raid was done without probable cause, therefore unlawful. And then also in the New York case that where he was found guilty, and we're waiting for the sentencing, which is still a few weeks away. Today it was announced that the judge in that case, who has not done anything that Trump has asked for or his team has asked for, and I wouldn't have expected him to do any favors for Donald Trump, lifted the gag order in that case, or at least partially lifted the gag order. Let's start with that situation in New York City. Can you explain what that means? And does that surprise you? Because I feel like that's like doing a favor or doing something that Trump's team asked for, which is not normal for this judge in New York to do.
We sure didn't see a lot of that during and ahead of the trial, it seemed like. It doesn't actually surprise me, and here's why. The trial's over. The only thing that still has to be sorted out as far as that court is concerned is his sentencing, and that's going to be on July 11th. So from a practical standpoint, keeping him gagged as to witnesses who testified in the trial and the jurors in general doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So what Judge Merchant did in this ruling, now keep in mind, Trump's team specifically asked after the trial was over, that they said, okay, now that the trial's over, will you lift the gag order? And this was his ruling on that. And in the meantime, they had actually appealed the fact that he imposed the gag order to begin with all the way up to the top court in New York. That court said, nah, we're not going to hear this right now. So this was them going back to the trial judge and saying, okay, we're done with the trial part of it. Can he talk now? And Judge Merchant basically split the baby. I mean, he said, yeah, it's okay. We're going to lift the gag order as to witnesses. So, for instance, Trump can say what he really thinks of Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels. Okay. We're gonna lift it as to jurors in the sense that he can talk about and say, oh, well, I didn't like the looks of that jury, blah, 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 blah. He cannot disclose personal information about those jurors. None of the parties can.
Okay.
That's because, some of them may still want to remain anonymous. And so that's going to remain in effect. He was always allowed to criticize Alvin Bragg. Alvin Bragg was always exempted from the gag order. But for now, he's still not allowed to talk about court staff or family members. And the rationale the judge gives is because, look, the sentencing is still, the jury has rendered their verdict, but the case is still before the court. We haven't sentenced him yet. So while that's going on, we're still going to protect these people. Mm-hmm. And the one thing, there's two aspects of that are probably going to be a little bit of a problem for Donald Trump, particularly in light of the debate on Thursday. One is he's not going to be able to say anything about that Matthew Colangelo, who was the DOJ attorney that came suddenly stepped down and went to work for Alvin Bragg's office. Mm-hmm. And he's not going to be able to talk about Judge Merchant's daughter.
Gotcha.
So,
because, I'm reading here. It says, as you mentioned, individual prosecutors, court staff, and their family members. So those are still protected by the gag order. So he can't talk about any lawyers, I guess, except for prosecutors, like except for Alvin Bragg, who is his, but outside of that, none of the lawyers that were involved in this, none of the people prosecuting him, the judge himself, the judge's family members, or any other family members. So all of those are the people that are off limits. But outside of that, that's well, and the jury thing that you mentioned, which I guess would also count as court staff, or at least part of the, from that standpoint. Those are the people that are out of bounds still for Donald Trump.
Right. And I don't know that Judge Merchant is out of bounds, because I don't think Judge Merchant was ever part of the order. If you remember, Trump did say some specific things about him without naming him by name, and that didn't get him in as hot water. So I'm not 100% sure that it didn't really say.
Yeah, no, it says court staff. So I was making an assumption that court staff meant the judge.
But from a practical standpoint, if you're talking about the guy who is going to be sentencing you in 2.5 weeks, yeah, it might not be a bad idea to refrain from saying like the most heinous things about him. I don't know.
So, Susie, whenever we kind of talk about this initially, I think, oh, this is a win for Trump. Like, this is a great thing that happened for him. But now that you kind of start talking about how he can't utilize some of these key players on the debate stage, which to me, that's when all of the average Joes are looking and hearing things possibly for the first time, some of this information. Did Trump win, or is this now more of like, well, we did this as a strategy to actually shut you up on the debate stage?
I think it's a mixed bag. And I think he can claim a win, because I had people telling me flat out, oh, Judge Merchant's going to keep the gag order in place and across the board. And, he's never going to lift it. And I was like, yeah, I don't know about that. From a practical standpoint, he doesn't have a whole lot of justification for keeping it in place, except for the people that are still affected by this. It is kind of a minefield, because Trump's going to have to be very deliberate in what he says. He can't just like off the cuff say stuff. He's going to have to figure out ahead of time, okay, where are my go zones and my no go zones, if he doesn't want to wind himself in jail for violating the gag order.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with you completely. The only reason I would say that I am a little bit surprised by this is just because this judge doesn't have justification or good reason or even precedent to do these things. It doesn't seem like that stopped him in the past. With some of the decisions he's made.
They already got the conviction. And he did relent and let Trump go see Barron's graduation. So I felt like this was one of those where he could give a little bit and still kind of maintain his authority.
He's a real angel. Before we change gears to the Florida situation, do you have any new insight or gut feeling about when we do get to that sentencing, what it's going to entail on July 11th? Do I have that date right for
Correct.
Sentencing? Yeah.
Correct. Okay, so assuming nothing changes between now and then, like for instance, Trump doesn't go off and completely violate the gag order and that sort of thing. What should happen, assuming the court's not going to just set aside the verdict, which we know he's not going to do, what should happen is he should basically receive a pretty much a minimal sentence. You're talking about business entry violations, so nonviolent. You're talking about misdemeanors that were, twisted every which way to make them felonies, and you're talking about a first-time offender who's, it's not like he's a flight risk. I mean, there's no place in the world that Donald Trump can go and no one will. Yeah. So with all of those things taken into consideration, what the judge should do is sentence him to basically like a probationary sentence, pay a fine and whatever.
Yeah.
But, to the extent that there is political maneuvering going on here and they want to hammer him, hamstring him more, the judge could sentence him to like a minimal type, jail sentence that would put him behind bars, but not for a lengthy time. But my instinct on this judge is, he definitely is not in Trump's camp, and he's made some rulings that are really questionable and I think should be overturned. But I don't know that he wants to stick his neck out so far that he's the guy that puts Trump in jail for this.
Yeah, I hope you're right. And then Susie, before we let you go, I originally didn't even intend to ask you about this, but then I saw these headlines making some news today about the cases in Florida, and the Trump team making an argument today that the raid on Mar-a-Lago was unconstitutional because it was without probable cause. Can you just give us the Cliff Notes version of what that case is about, and what could happen? What are we looking at as far as a result in that case?
Yeah, so this is the classified documents case filed by Jack Smith against Trump in Florida, and it arose out of the Mar-a-Lago raid and his retention of the documents. So the Trump team has filed a number of motions with the court saying that the case against Trump should be dismissed. And they've been arguing those motions. They argued one on Friday. They argued two. Well, they argued one yesterday, and the Jack Smith team was arguing actually for a gag order in that case. That was in the afternoon. And then today they're arguing a third one of those motions, and that is saying, look, this was unconstitutional. His due process was violated. You pierced the attorney-client privilege, which you weren't supposed to be able to do in order to get some of this evidence to begin with. So this case should be thrown out. Judge Cannon is hearing all of those matters, and she's, I'm sure, going to take them under advisement. She's not going to rule from the bench. So the chances of her ruling on them, I mean, it could be a couple weeks before she issues her ruling. It'll at least be a few days. And in the meantime, we're going to get the Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, which could impact everything too.
Yeah, Susie, I don't know what we would do without you, because there's so much of this craziness happening and so many questions and clarification needed when it comes to all of these various cases. So really appreciate you jumping in and helping us out this afternoon. And we'll talk to you again very soon, my friend. That is Susie Moore from redstate.com.
Sounds good, guys.
Yeah, have a great rest of your day.
Have a great afternoon.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much.
And I know that you still want to see me. On the Sunday morning music real loud. Let me love you while the moon is still out. Something in you.
Colombo and Katie, the new faces of talk radio. Number one for live and local conservative talk. News Talk STL.
I think we should be able to have a civil conversation.
The news and talk that matters to St. Louis.
This conversation has completely made me crazy.
This is complete insanity.
News Talk STL.
Replacing your roof is always a big deal and a big decision. That's why I want you to call my friends, the folks that we've trusted with our homestead, Eureka Contracting and Roofing. 636-938-ROOF. That's 636-938-ROOF. They are veteran-owned, over 30 years of experience in the construction and insurance industry. They'll replace 100% of your roof, siding, fascia, and gutters. They'll come to you with a personal consultation. Give them a call anytime that Mother Nature strikes you. 636-938-ROOF. Available 24/7 at eurekacontracting.com. That's eurekacontracting.com.
Tony Colombo here, reminding you to visit my friends at Bluff City Outdoors in Alton before your next trip into the great outdoors. For decades, Bluff City Outdoors has covered all the needs for area fishermen, and they'll always have all the best bait, tackle, and gear for your next trip on the water. And now they cover all your bow hunting needs, including their state-of-the-art indoor archery range and techno hunt system, open every day for you to come shoot, or you can join a league. Follow Bluff City Outdoors on Facebook and learn more at bluffcityoutdoors.com.
This is Larry Connor's commentary on News Talk STL.
NBA star LeBron James is worth $1.2 billion. So he has money, and he also has heart. In 2018, he opened a school in his hometown of Akron, Ohio, giving back to his community. He put up $2 million to open the school for third and fourth graders, and pledging $2 million or more each year to that school called I Promise. And he put in personal time. Now, this school was to help elementary students who did not do well in school. They had longer days at this school, plus school during the summer, all to help them retain what they learned. It grew from just third and fourth grades to have first through eighth grades. So, how are the students doing? Well, in its first year, 90% of the third and fourth grade students did pass Ohio basic math and reading test. That was 2019. But since that time, none, not one eighth grader has passed the state basic math and reading test since 2019. The school mission, nothing is given. Everything is earned. Such a shame.
Get more Larry Connors on Larry Connors USA.
Tonight at 6 on News Talk STL.
On the next
Larry Connors USA.
It's Monday. We're back in the box, and we got a great program lined up for you. Make sure you're listening. All coming up today.
Larry Connors USA. Now, weeknights 6 until 8 on News Talk STL.
Welcome back to Colombo and Katie on 101.9 News Talk STL. Got a packed show for you today. As we mentioned, Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey is going to join us about an hour from now at 3:25. In about 15 minutes, we're going to talk to the Secretary of State of Missouri, Jay Ashcroft. And right now on the line with us, as he is every Thursday at this time, is Missouri State Representative Justin Sparks. Justin, sounds like you are on the road. I would imagine that, we spent the first part of the year talking every week about what was happening in the legislative session. And now it is, it's going around is specifically your district and talking to voters, right? I mean, is that the season we're in right now for you as a state rep?
You're exactly right. And that's exactly it. We are knocking on doors and knocking on more doors, talking to voters. Although my question to you guys is, why are you even interviewing me today when you have such big names on your show? Like you're
part of that,
we'll
Justin.
see you next week, guys.
Hey, you're the right. You're
part of it.
You belong here more than they do. You're
belong.
part of the. You're
That's
part of
right,
the family.
Tony. Thank
You're
you.
part of the family.
You
every
matter,
week.
Justin.
Yeah.
Thank
Now,
you,
if
Katie.
Andrew Bailey would have said he had to do 225 or he couldn't be on, then yeah, you'd have been kicked out. But no,
Yeah,
no,
but I would have been kicked off. Exactly.
no, absolutely not. So, what are you hearing? What are you hearing as you're talking to voters that are getting ready for? As we just mentioned that last segment, we talked a lot with Rodney Boyd about yesterday. The August primary is probably a bigger deal this year. It certainly is a bigger deal when it comes to local elections, whether it be statewide offices like governor and secretary of state and lieutenant governor, or it's congressional elections like Wesley Bell and Cori Bush in St. Louis. It's very obvious that there's more impact in that August primary than there is in the general in November. And that is weird. And that's right around the corner. So Missouri voters are going to have to be making some very big decisions in a very short period of time.
Yeah. Great point, because it's a kind of a unique situation that Missouri is in right now, because not only is the country at an inflection point, but our state is at an inflection point. And knocking on the doors and talking to the voters, they have a sense of unease, which is the very first question I ask is, what are your concerns on the state level? And they laugh and they say, well, I've got a whole bunch on the federal level first. How long do you have? And I said, I understand. I do get that. I understand your concerns. And they want to say, like, what the world are we doing? Like, where are we going as a country?
Mm-hmm.
Who's in charge exactly? Why is our southern border open? Why, when we keep getting inundated with news of an illegal migrant raping 14 people, an illegal migrant raping a 14-year-old girl at knife point, being
In
dragged
broad daylight.
in broad daylight, okay? These people are here illegally. These are not your women and children running from communist Venezuela. These are military-aged males, and these are your criminals. The South American and Central American countries have emptied out their prisons. And, when we said, give me your tired, you're poor, but don't give us your convicted felons, for heaven's sakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's really happening. So people are worried and people are uneasy. So they want to know, how are you going to keep my neighborhood safe? And what are we going to do to close our southern border? And people are worried. And that's the overwhelming sentiment that I get at the doors. And I understand it.
Justin, Tony read an interesting poll last week, I believe, and it was about 61 or 63% of Americans have said they would like illegal immigrants deported from this country.
They support deporting people here illegally.
So to you, Justin, is that a small number or a big number percentage-wise?
Oh, no, that's huge. And I'll be honest with you, to see a poll like that of folks finally saying that things are so bad and folks are so worried, it didn't surprise me, Katie, because that's exactly what people are saying at the doors. And, and they almost feel a little bad when they say it, right? Because they're like, listen, I understand people want a better life. I understand people want to come to this country, but now it's affecting the safety of my family. You see, guys, everybody has a line, don't they?
Yes.
Everyone has a line. What is your line? What is my line? My line is my kids. My line is my family and the future that I'm going to provide for my family. And if I can't ensure safety and security and the well-being of my children and future generations, we don't have a country anymore. And so finally people are like, listen, I want people to have a better life, but not at the expense of breaking the law, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there is a sense of self-responsibility. Like your country is not doing well. You're not going to break the law and come into our country and take advantage of a politicized system that Joe Biden has opened up the floodgates to in order to replace his voters that are fleeing the Democratic Party.
So, Justin, I agree with the opinion that all states are a border state right now. All states are very impacted by this crisis, this disaster that has just gotten out of control under this Biden administration. However, the actual geographical border states, they can take action by trying to, build their own wall, go around the federal government to do that. They can put their own law enforcement or, other state agencies at the border to try to make things better. What can you as a lawmaker in the state of Missouri and me as a voter in the state of Missouri, what actions can we take to combat this not being, a geographical border state, just the border state that everybody else is these days?
Great question, Tony. I love how you're thinking because you just hit on the future of the state of Missouri. What you're talking about is a renewed sense of federalism. And instead of a slow pendulum swinging back and forth, what you're going to see is a snap back of states' rights. And the Supreme Court has really signaled a willingness to go down that road, whether it be with Roe v. Wade or, essentially administrative bureaucracies in Washington, D.C. legislating statutes and striking that down. You've seen the Supreme Court start to say that states have more rights than they're currently using. And what I'm saying about a pendulum swinging is for a long time, because of budgets, states have really abdicated their authority to the federal government. This has been happening for decades, going back all the way to Barry Goldwater, okay? And this has been incremental over time. And now, because things have gotten so bad, that basically states have to assert themselves and their own sovereignty and start doing what it is they should have been doing from the very beginning. Meaning, we can pass laws in Missouri to basically seize illegal immigrants and deport them. And we are going to be filing that legislation. Each state can start to take responsibility for the safety and well-being of their constituents and their citizens, something that each state should have been doing for 60 years, but slowly over time, because of the budget, we've been taking federal money for such a long time that we've abdicated that authority and that well-being and that responsibility to the federal government. And now our state budget in Missouri is over half paid by federal money. That has to change.
Yeah, it does have to change. And there's a lot of things that have to change. We have to get back to more state control, more of a states' rights system. You mentioned, us handing away that power to the federal government over, decades of time. How difficult is it to get that back? How difficult is it? And a lot of it is our own fault. And I just mean voters in general across the country for decades that allowed this federal government to get bigger and bigger and chip away. And now we're seeing what the results of that are just disaster. How do we get back? How do we take power back from a federal government that has definitely no interest in giving any power back?
Slowly at the beginning and then all at once. What you're seeing, guys, is going to be revolutionary, but not in the sense of like 1776. What's going to be revolutionary is that when each state, you're going to have diametrically opposed people. So when you're talking on the ideological spectrum, you've got people that are never going to meet, right? That's why people are talking about, oh my gosh, is there going to be a civil war? People talking about civil war in the United States. More people are talking about civil war in the United States than they ever have since our original Civil War. And there's a reason for that, because there are people that are so completely opposed to each other, they're never going to find any common ground. Well, then you can move to a state where those policies are in place. You can move to California. You can move to New York. You can move to Illinois. Or you can move to places like Arkansas, Florida, Texas, Missouri, or Tennessee. And the real arbiter, the real decider of these states and the success will be your own eyeballs and what you can observe. Because these red states, these states that implement real conservative, traditional American values are going to be successful. And you're going to see an even greater influx of population going to those states and fleeing places like California, where you're in an insane world.
Mm-hmm. I last question here, Justin, before we have to let you go, before we run out of time. I'm going to present an optimistic opinion, which is not normal for me. but as you say that and as you talk about that, and I agree with you completely, and there are extreme politics and extreme beliefs that have taken over the conversation, the national conversation. And there are certainly rank and file citizens and voters that fall into that extreme category as well. But I truly believe that the vast majority of Americans, whether they are Democrats or Republicans, liberal, conservative, everybody is recognizing that we've gone out of control. And they're not, even the progressives and the conservatives are I think getting to a point where they're willing to work together to try to bring some normalcy back. And I hope that happens, and I hope that I'm right. Do you feel that way as well, that we're not as divided as the media or politicians would like to make you believe?
Right. No, you are right, because there are people with their own hidden agendas that want to exacerbate that situation for political gain. You're absolutely right, because normal people at the doors, like you can have a Trump voter on one side, and across the street, you can have a Joe Biden sign, right? And these people get along with each other, love each other, and they actually care about each other, typically. And so I think that we have to go back to all the way Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War and appeal to the better angels of our nature. And instead of, we need to look to try to heal. And guys, you know how I feel, but this is a spiritual question. And I believe that people need to look inward and maybe spend a little time on their knees.
Yeah. Well said. I just, I truly believe that there are plenty of Joe Biden voters out there that don't think that boys should be playing against girls in sports,
right?
And that illegal immigrants should be able to walk freely around the country.
Totally.
They just,
Absolutely.
it's not as insane as the television and the politicians sometimes try to make you believe that it is. Justin, as always, really appreciate your time. Look forward to talking to you again next week. In the meantime, as always, if people want to keep up with you and what you're working on and the things you're talking about, remind us about the websites and the social media.
Justin M. Sparks on X and Justin Sparks on Facebook, sparksformissouri.com. God bless you guys.
Back at you. Thank you so much for your time, as always. That is Missouri State Representative Justin Sparks, and we are going to move to the next conversation with Missouri Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft. He joins us back on the show here next on Colombo and Katie.
St. Louis's new choice for conservative talk.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Live and local.
Welcome home. And whoosh, sitting in traffic, stuck in a jam, and being entertained by Vic and Thunder Stealing Ken.
This is News Talk STL. News, analysis, opinion.
What are you talking about? You're the morals of an alley cat. And he doesn't care about our veterans. Nobody been worse. I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we can do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of this, and I don't think he knows what he said either.
1019 and 94.1.
St. Louis is number one.
For conservative talk.
News Talk STL and newstalkstl.com.
Jewels on Hampton and St. Louis Hills is paying some of the highest prices on gold, silver, diamonds, semi-precious colored stones, coins, flatware, and fine watches on site. Jewels on Hampton is a premier jeweler featuring Alvanza's jewel art designs with an exquisite selection of diamonds, semi-precious stone jewelry, and vintage watches. Their expert design team can restyle your jewelry to today's contemporary style. They also do jewelry and watch repair. Need extra cash? Jewels on Hampton is paying some of the highest prices on gold, silver, diamonds, semi-precious colored stones, coins, flatware, and fine watches. Bring in your collectibles and clocks and sports memorabilia and figurines too. Jewels on Hampton, 4506 Hampton, just 3 blocks south of Chippewa, and jewelsonhampton.com. Call them at 314-752-5000, 314-752-5000, and jewelsonhampton.com. Jewels on Hampton.
Talk radio made in St. Louis.
Very excited for what you guys are doing for the St. Louis community.
For St. Louis.
Relevant local talk.
Saying what we are thinking.
This is News Talk STL.
You guys are awesome. I love you. And it's a tremendous honor to be on the station.
News, analysis, and opinion.
Thanks for covering the local angle.
Come on, people. This is America.
We better open our eyes.
Really local, really good.
News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and newstalkstl.com. This hour of Colombo and Katie brought to you by Gutter Pros. Water goes where we tell it. Call 314-656-7195 or visit them at gutterpros.com. Stream Colombo and Katie at newstalkstl.com.
700 billion and $1.3 billion.
Follow Katie Fitzpatrick on Twitter at KFitzTalks.
Well, everyone, this is Colombo and Katie. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for hanging out. I am Katie Fitzpatrick. I have the wonderful Susie Moore, Deputy Managing Editor at Red State, in with me. Hi, Susie.
Hey, Katie.
So, yeah, we had just some normal radio stuff going on, some technical issues. We got it resolved. That's what we do. We problem solve up in here. Susie is here with me because my wonderful co-host Tony Colombo is on vacation with his family at Disney. I always forget to mention that. And it's like Radio 101. Whenever someone is out, you say where they are.
Right.
And I didn't do it deliberately, Tony. I did not do it deliberately. I just last Friday, whenever he had his first vacation day, I was just so absorbed with the debate and I was so ready to get at it. So Tony, if you're curious, is at Disney. And that is why Susie and I are hosting today. We're so thrilled that you guys are here with us. Remember that you guys can watch us on any of our live streams. We stream on all of our platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Rumble, YouTube. So please watch us on our live streams. Comment. We love to read your comments, to hear from you guys, to interact with you all. It means so much that you're watching and you're listening. You can also listen from your app. If you have a phone, you have a radio. Something really big happened today.
Yep.
Huge. And it's perfect timing to have Susie in the studio with me. Everybody probably heard Susie already on the Vic Porcelli show. And I just cannot wait to dig into your brain because Susie wrote an article at Red State, redstate.com. Supreme Court rules on presidential immunity. It was the first article I saw today. And I was thrilled that it was yours, Susie. Can you pretty please break down what happened today with the Supreme Court and the ruling?
Yeah, I'll do my best. Now, that's not going to be an easy task because it's not the most straightforward ruling, just so people know. Sometimes it's like they've overruled Roe versus Wade. That's pretty straightforward. This is a little more complex. So Donald Trump, our former president and current frontrunner, as most people know, has been indicted in several different jurisdictions for different things. One of those is a case in Washington, D.C., brought by special prosecutor, special counsel Jack Smith, which alleges that after the November 2020 election, Donald Trump improperly did some things to try and overturn that election, working with others to try and bring in like fake electors or alternative electors, depending on who's characterizing it, and a number of actions that he took following the election. So the basis of that case, there's like 4 counts, and I should know them by heart, but I don't, so I apologize. But in any event, in that criminal case, as one of his defenses, Trump raised the fact that he was the president at the time he took those actions. And there's this presumption, this idea about presidential immunity. Why is there presidential immunity? Well, because you don't want the person who holds the most important office in the land to be like frozen and afraid to take any actions because anything they move, say, or do could be they could be sued for or charged with criminally. So you have to have like a broad protection around that.
Okay.
The question is, how broad is that protection? And what the Supreme Court ruled today was, well, it's absolute when it comes to the core functions of the presidency, something that only the president has the power to do. There's a list of those. It's all in the Constitution. But anything that is solely in the purview of the president, that's core. You're absolutely immune for that. Then you get to official acts, which goes beyond that. It might be something that the president has some authority on, but Congress has some authority on, or the courts have some authority on. So there's a little bit of overlap there in terms of their function. And the court said that a president has presumptive immunity, at least, with regard to official acts. And then you get to unofficial acts, which he doesn't have immunity for. So the question becomes, what was an official act and what's an unofficial act? And
totally one of the questions I had for you, Susie. I'm like, what? I keep seeing these two words, and they seem to hold a ton of weight.
They do.
In making that decision specifically about Trump. But yes, this was one of my big questions for you.
Yeah. So that's the key, is the demarcation line is between official acts and unofficial acts. But what happened is when all this was going down, the lower courts kind of ruled sort of broadly, and they didn't stop and take a look at each act and make an analysis or do an analysis of whether it was an official act or an unofficial act. So the Supreme Court said, listen, we're sending it back to you. It's now your job, lower courts, trial court, to to examine the acts, the conduct that he's accused of, and determine which, if any of those acts were unofficial versus official. And they gave a little bit of guidance on what, examples of what might be official and unofficial. I haven't, of course, had a chance to read the entire ruling, so I don't have a good handle on where they sort of hinted at where that line would be. I know that they said like his conversations with the acting attorney general would probably fall under official conduct.
Okay.
When he started maybe having conversations with his vice president and about some of the election stuff, that might be getting a little bit closer because it really doesn't have to do so much with the presidency.
Yeah.
So it's going to go back to the lower court, and they're going to have at least one, if not multiple, like evidentiary hearings to determine what is and isn't official.
So that, amongst so many other things, I have so many questions. I told Susie off air before we even started the show. I just have so many things I want to talk about, because my first question is, what does this mean for Trump's election? What does this mean for him right now?
Right.
How does it affect it?
So the practical effect of this is a good one for him, because there's 134 days until the election. That's not a lot of time. That's not a big window. And in order to do what the lower court, the trial court, needs to do now to make these determinations, and even once that court rules, even if they somehow moved at lightning speed and get everything before the court and the court makes a ruling quickly, well, whatever the court rules is probably going to be appealed back up through the Circuit Court of Appeals and then to the Supreme Court, because that, again, is going to have an impact. So the practical effect of this is that the likelihood of the case against him in D.C. being actually fully tried, the way the one in New York was before the election, is very, very slim. And I'm not going to say there's no way, because I think that there's motivation on the part of the prosecution and possibly the judge to go ahead and get this one out of the way before the election. But once you start getting into September and October, then there's an added argument by his legal team that this is just, it's unprecedented, and you can't expect a leading candidate or, a major party nominee heading into a presidential election to be sitting in trial It's a very unique it is a unique situation.
So let's everybody on Twitter, of course, everybody in the media freaking out at this idea. I feel like they have never heard of presidential immunity a day in their lives. We have Joy Reid going on TikTok talking about now whoever's going to be the next president is going to be the king of the land, and our founding fathers would be turning over in their grave because now the president is going to be just like a king and they'll never get in trouble for anything. But my question, Susie, and I guess we don't know the answer yet, but just from all of your findings and your readings, is this just for this presidency, or could we dig up for however far we want to go and then start measuring what each president has done, the phone calls they have made, decisions they have made, and start deciphering and picking and choosing if this immunity wasn't put into place?
That is a really good question, and it's actually addressed by Chief Justice Roberts in his opinion, kind of upfront, saying like this is a huge consequence, and it's why we have to get it right. And he explains that this has nothing to do with this particular case has to do with President Trump, but this is going to apply to anybody who holds that office, both forward-looking and backward-looking within reason. I mean, you have statutes of limitations and that sort of thing that are going to probably foreclose a lot of people prior to Trump, at least for most actions. I mean, there's always been the people have brought up frequently the drone strike that was ordered under President Obama that killed an American citizen.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Joy Reid, noted legal scholar that she is wrong in her assessment of that, but I'm sure it's good for clicks. But no, I think what's happening is the court started out by saying there's absolute immunity for the core presidential functions. So people saw absolute immunity and thought it meant like, you can stand on Fifth Avenue and shoot anybody, whatever. No, that's literally for the things that only the president is authorized under the Constitution to do. Then it goes beyond that, and you have to kind of weigh it all out and figure it all out. And there hasn't been a determination about this, and it's in front of a court that's not friendly to Trump. So the people that are lighting their hair on fire sincerely, they just need to chill.
So going back to this idea of people lighting their hair on fires, specifically the Democrats losing their mind because I think they have a sickening stomach at the idea that Trump really might be their president again. I don't think that they can really grasp that, especially after the debate. The other thing I keep hearing, rogue Supreme Court. That is what I'm surprised it might already be a hashtag on Twitter X right now. But everyone that is a Democrat behind the keyboard keeps saying, this is a rogue Supreme Court. Van Jones said today, Susie, this court might as well be putting on their MAGA hats and wearing like I love Donald Trump t-shirts because that's how far they're taking this. This is not just affecting Donald Trump, though, as we just discussed. This is presidents. This is the past and the future and the present. So what is the idea that the Democrats are trying to push this rogue Supreme Court? What benefit does that do if they keep having this idea bouncing off of this immunity to say, if Trump is our next president, think about what he can do with this Supreme Court that's ultra MAGA or whatever?
Well, a big part of what's pushing them to make those commentary or those statements and those observations is because they want to have a way to delegitimize anything that the court does that they disagree with. But what's really funny is those same people were not crowing about or squawking about a rogue Supreme Court last week when the Supreme Court sent the Murphy versus Missouri case back down for lack of standing, the First Amendment, for a big tech case. As somebody who's been covering the Supreme Court's rulings all this entire season, if you will, this term, the vast majority of the rulings were 9-0 rulings.
That's what
There were a bunch that were split that had like Kavanaugh and Barrett with Sotomayor and Jackson on one side and 5 on the other. I mean, there are some strict party line splits. They do happen, but they've always happened. So basically, the people that are making that allegation are either ill-informed, let's say, or they're being disingenuous, and it's because they think politically they have to make that argument to undermine any of the decisions that the court makes that they don't like.
It just has become such an insane thing to observe and to watch, especially going back to the point that you just made. Amy Coney Barrett was the main writer for the social media big tech argument. She was the person saying, no,
Yeah.
I am siding with the Biden administration, if you will.
Right.
So you would think that kind of thing would be reported more in mainstream media on the Democrat side, because that is a win, for lack of a better term, for the person that they've been rooting for.
It is.
Why is that not covered? Why is it always the conservatives, it feels like to me, being the people covering the Supreme Court, win or lose, happy or sad, upset with the decision, happy for the decision, but it's never the mainstream media looking at an observation like that saying, wow, maybe it isn't this conservative, crazy court that we're dealing with. There is balance.
Part of that might be like, it's an overgeneralization, but part of it might be because, in general terms, conservatives and people on the right side of the spectrum tend to be more independent minded and more willing to recognize that they're not going to agree lockstep with everybody on their side about everything. And the Democrats and progressives have, at least in recent history, done a very good job of kind of keeping everybody in lockstep. So when their talking points go out, you don't see a lot of questioning on that side of the aisle. Now, that's me speaking as somebody on the right side of the aisle, so
Is saying,
I know what my perspective is. I get that. But I used to be on the left side of the aisle, so it's like I still remember
what that was.
Yeah, what that looked like. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's fascinating to watch happen. And it does. I see, like, there's decisions that come down that don't go the conservative way, if you will. And I see conservatives talking about how, they're traitors and, John Roberts is a blood. Yeah, right. And I get it. I understand the frustration. The bottom line is the one thing that the court does above all else is preserve its own integrity. So there's going to be times when, whether the chief strong-armed people or not, to get like a unanimous verdict on something or a unanimous decision on something to kind of protect the court. Well, we need the court to be protected because it's kind of the last bastion of like sanity when you've got, people going crazy one way or the other about the president and who it is. And you've got the people in Congress like having food fights on the floor. So you kind of need the court to stay sane and stay balanced. And sometimes that means you're going to have to take some losses.
It's a really tough job. It's a really, really tough job. I think now more than ever, there's so many people that I know voted for Donald Trump in 2016 because they understood how important the courts were. That was their primary goal. We heard a lot about that back at our old station. And at that time in 2016, I was young and naive, and I had no idea what was going on with the world around me, let alone how important something like SCOTUS was. And then something like this happens, and so many other cases, as you guys just heard, around 2:05, it was a replay, but we talked to Susie about Trump's other legal issues, about his other battles that he's been winning and losing and all of that. You start to realize how critical something like this is. And you really start to pay attention to say, okay, Trump might not be my dude. I have grown to really like Trump, especially I thought he did astounding at the debate. But this is why it matters. This is where the rubber meets the road on so many things, because this is dictating the construction of America.
Right.
This is dictating so many things that we have to do to keep living our lives and to have America stand the test of time.
Yeah, it is critical to that, and people sometimes lose sight of the big picture. Had Hillary Clinton won in 2016, undoubtedly Merrick Garland would have been appointed to the Supreme Court, so he would be one of the justices there now instead of an AG, which I don't think he's doing a great job as AG either, but at least that's an appointed position that's going to go away whenever this president is no longer the president. Supreme Court justices sit for life. So that's big. It really does kind of, and I do think that was one of the strongest arguments for Trump's first presidency and what did put him over the edge for a lot of people. And he was smart to kind of couch, like, here's what I plan to do in terms of my judicial appointments. And, I think you picked some good people, and I don't agree with any of them on everything, but that's the nature of life. You're not supposed to agree with anybody 100% of the time. If you do, there's something wrong.
I also have one more question before we head off to our break. Is this the most important Trump legal case that he got a victory on? Or as you said, middle of the road? There's some things that he
Yeah, it's a wash for him
Yeah.
right now, but it's a practical good win because it helps him with his candidacy. Actually, no, I think the Florida case is actually bigger because and right now Judge Cannon, who's the judge overseeing that one, she's weighing, she heard hearings last week and the week before on some really key issues in that. One of them which has to do with whether or not Jack Smith as the special counsel was even properly appointed.
Right.
So this case is going to impact her case, but her case is going to impact this case too. It's all kind of intertwined. And that case ultimately that goes to the power of the president to declassify and what records are presidential records and which ones aren't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that one's pretty important too. I think the least important one is the Georgia one. And
Yeah.
it's kind of fallen off the radar because of everything that went on with Fonnie Willis and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Mess.
So yeah. But I mean, they're all important in different ways. And it's fascinating as a lawyer and a journalist to kind of watch it all happen and then try to understand it and report on it.
I'm so happy that you're here with me today, Susie. Susie and I are hosting Colombo and Katie for the remainder of the show. Thank you guys so much for listening. We have Sean Carney coming up next, president and CEO of 40 Days for Life. We're going to speak to him about how important the topic of Roe versus Wade, how important abortion is right now, especially after seeing what we just saw on the debate stage.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to speak with him at 3:05. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Colombo and Katie on 101.9 94.1 News Talk STL.
From the outside, creeping to the door, it's like they know. Now they're coming, yeah, now
Stream
they're
Colombo
coming.
and Katie at newstalkstl.com.
Take me to the court because they know I shut this down. They've been watching all my windows.
No matter how big the event, Capriotti's can take care of all of your business or personal catering needs. With party trays, box lunches, a meatball bar, shareable salads, plus desserts and sides. Easy ordering is available via the Capriotti's app. Check it all out at capriottis.com.
Connor Roofing, you can count on Connor. Connor Roofing is now a 2-time winner of the National Best of the Best Award for customer satisfaction for roofing, storm damage restoration, siding, gutters, both residential and commercial. Please visit ConnorRoofing.com for an estimate. And remember, you can count on Connor.
I'm Dr. TJ, owner of the Institute of Natural Health, co-owner of Optimal Nutraceuticals, and the host of Wellness 101. Wellness 101 is designed to cut through the nonsense and provide you common sense, science-based information regarding health and wellness. On the show, we discuss topics like thyroid health, gut health, hormone optimization, and many others. Our show airs Saturdays at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. right here on News Talk STL. For more information, visit us at inhstl.com. That's inhstl.com.
Number one for live and local
conservative talk.
What are you talking about?
News, analysis, and opinion.
The only person on the stage is a convicted felon is the man I'm looking at right now.
That's why you had no terror at all during my administration.
Everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
He was right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare.
101.9 and 94.1.
St. Louis is number one for conservative talk.
News Talk STL. When you've got something to say, be heard loud and clear.
If they'll just do what they were voted in to do.
This party needs to get a backbone. They need to get some spine.
Join the conversation. St. Louis's place to talk.
The Democrats and the Republicans can give us all the lip service they want, but what they need to do is take action today.
101.9 and 94.1.
You know, you have to take a stand sometimes.
This is News Talk STL. News, analysis, and opinion. Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
Christopher Ruddy, he's the founder and CEO of Newsmax.
Soros recently announced that his number one goal was to stop Donald Trump, and they have put their money where their mouth is. He took control of the largest conservative Hispanic talk station, Radio Mambi in Miami, and of course moving that more liberal. And so he's going to get control of a lot of conservative talk stations. And I think it's problematic.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps, weekdays at 4 on News Talk STL. Always be clear where you get your conservative talk.
The St. Louis Business Journal is now reporting that liberal billionaire George Soros is the largest shareholder of Odyssey,
the parent company of KMOX and 97.1 Talk. Soros' maneuver raises critical questions about the future of media ownership and influence.
Money and attention is power. And when he has the money and he controls what's on the radio stations, he's going to be able to control the minds, potentially hundreds of millions of Americans.
St. Louis's trusted source and number one
for
conservative talk.
This is News Talk STL. KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefonte, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
Breaking news this hour from townhall.com. I'm John Scott. The Supreme Court has ruled that former presidents are entitled to some immunity from prosecution. White House correspondent Greg Clugston reports.
In a historic 6-3 ruling, justices said former presidents have absolute immunity for official acts, but no immunity for unofficial acts. And the High Court is sending Donald Trump's immunity case back to a lower court to figure out how it applies to the former president. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote that the president is not above the law, but Congress may not criminalize the president's conduct in carrying out constitutional responsibilities. The immediate outcome means an extended delay in the Trump matter and the unlikelihood that a trial could be held before the November presidential election. Greg Clugston, Washington.
Also at townhall.com, Republicans see odds improve in the race for House control. Correspondent Bernie Bennett shares details.
Post-debate questions about President Biden's fitness for office could further help the GOP down ballot. The race for House control could still go either way, but it tilted clearly toward the Republicans before President Biden's debate performance. 3 top election analysts, Cook Political Report with Amy Walter, Inside Elections with Nathan Gonzalez, and University of Virginia professor Larry Sabado's Crystal Ball, each have more seats listed as leaning safe for the GOP than for the Democrats. The range isn't that different either, going from 210 Republican seats in the Cook Report to 216 in Inside Elections. Each publication gives the GOP between a 5 and 7 seat advantage over the Democrats. Bernie Bennett in Washington.
The case of Karen Reed on charges that she killed her Boston police officer boyfriend by striking him with her SUV has ended in a mistrial. The judge declared a mistrial after jurors were unable to reach a verdict following a 2-month trial. Reed had been charged with second-degree murder in the 2022 death of Officer John O'Keefe. Prosecutors promise a retrial. More at townhall.com.
You just grin and bear it or bite the bullet when it comes to everyday pain? Don't. Try Relief Factor, a drug-free daily supplement that helps your body fight pain naturally. Relief Factor doesn't just mask pain, it helps reduce or even eliminate it. It's 100% drug-free. It's developed by doctors. In 3 weeks or less, you'll know whether it works for you like it works for me. Try Relief Factor for yourself. Go to relieffactor.com or call 1-800-4RELIEF and save on your first order. That's 1-800-4-RELIEF.
Nowadays, $20 barely gets you a burger and fries, or maybe a quarter tank of gas. You know what it will get you, though? For just $20 a month, you can get unlimited talk, text, and plenty of 5G data from Pure Talk. You get the same 5G network as one of the legacy providers, but at half the price with Pure Talk. Plus, dial pound 250 and say keyword spend less to save an additional 50% off your first month. Make the switch today so you can actually afford that burger and fries. Dial pound 250 and say keyword spend less.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. The heat returns quickly on Tuesday. Our low 67, not too bad in the morning, but mostly sunny and a high of 94. Winds about 10 to 15 miles an hour out of the south. So it's going to heat up quickly with lots of sunshine Tuesday. Wednesday, a high of 94. We have a chance for a few showers or storms in the morning. They'll be weakening as they move in from the northwest. Then it heats up, that high of 94, and we'll watch for a chance of a strong to possibly severe storm in the late afternoon and evening. A little better chances just south of St. Louis, but we got to watch that for Wednesday evening. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Rodney and Jen Wallner and the entire Wallner home selling team at Berkshire Hathaway. Call them today at 314-810-SOLD. 314-810-SOLD.
Fox News commentary.
The Supreme Court ruled authorities can in fact penalize people for sleeping in public parks and streets. I'm Tommy Lahren. More next.
If you had $1 million in 2009, today it would be worth less than $700,000. Thank you, big government. Hedge against runaway inflation with gold from Birch Gold Group. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. I trust Birch Gold, and you can too.
Text the word SHELTER to the number 989898 and get a free, no-obligation info kit on gold. Text SHELTER to 989898 today.
been dubbed the anti-camping law in Oregon, and last week the Supreme Court upheld it. In a 6-3 decision, the High Court ruled that Grant Pass, Oregon's controversial ordinance cracking down on homeless camping free-for-alls in the public parks and streets is in fact not cruel and unusual punishment. The penalty for such action is a fine or even possible jail time, and while some bleeding hearts are up in arms, it makes perfect sense that homeless people shouldn't sprawl out wherever they please. Why should taxpayers have our parks and public areas turned into slumber parties for the homeless, many of whom are actively using drugs and or mentally ill? States pump billions of our tax dollars into the homeless crisis in the naive hope we won't have to jump over addicts sprawled out in our public parks and streets. The Supreme Court did the right thing. I feel for the homeless, but you can't just pitch a tent anywhere. I'm Tommy Lahren, and you can watch my show Tommy Lahren is Fearless at Outkick.com.
News, analysis, and opinion.
Let the American people see what's going on here.
News Talk STL.
Pay close attention.
St. Louis is number one.
Bottom line is this: St. Louis is number one
for conservative talk.
News Talk STL.
Ramblers in the wilderness, we can't find what we need. We get a little restless from the search and get a little worn down in between. Like a bull chasing the matadors, a man left to his own schemes. Everybody needs someone beside them, shining like a lighthouse from the sea. Never let me be your shelter, never leave you all alone. I can be the one you call when you know.
Welcome back to Colombo and Katie on 101.9 94.1 News Talk STL. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us this afternoon. You're listening to Katie Fitzpatrick, and my good friend Susie Moore is in here with me. Thank you, Susie, so much for filling in for Tony this afternoon.
You are welcome. I'm pleased to play the role of Tony.
We love it. She is the deputy managing editor at Red State. Go and check out all of her articles, redstate.com. That is an amazing website filled with awesome people who you get to call your colleagues.
Yeah.
Smart, funny, news of the day, politics, fun stuff. You can find it all at Red State. We're going to wait for our friend Sean Carney to call in. But while we wait for him, I told you, Susie, I had something interesting that I wanted to talk to you about. Had to do with squatters' rights.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So this is something that we've been talking about now for maybe the last month or two. I can't remember whenever it started to become like a really hot topic, probably even farther down the road from that. Nobody's really been doing anything about squatters.
Mm-hmm.
You see them all over New York. You see them in Connecticut. You see people now not only just saying, this is my home, but now stealing cable from their neighbors and electricity. I told you that off the air. There are people that are just going buck wild, being able to get away with whatever they want to get away with, and no one's doing anything. Well, Governor Ron DeSantis is stepping up to the plate, as he usually does, and he has a law that is being proposed right now in Florida. A new bill granting state law enforcement officers more power to remove squatters and raising criminal penalties for offenders went into effect today, potentially giving Florida homeowners the tools to protect their property while circumventing lengthy court processes. That is something I want to talk to you about, lengthy court processes when it comes to this. While other states are siding with the squatters, we are protecting property owners and punishing criminals looking to gain the system, DeSantis says. He continues. We've got people that will be here for 7 months of the year, and then they'll go to Michigan or New York or even Canada. You come back after the summer and someone's in your house, and then you just have to let them stay there for 6 months. Now in Florida, you can call up, you can fill out a form, and the sheriffs will come, and the sheriffs will kick them out of your property immediately. If we don't have private property rights, he continues, we will not have a free society. So it's the bedrock of Florida, and it's what we stand by, and we're proud to do it. Why, Susie, is this not something that every single state is trying to enact and trying to solve? It feels like it's something that has been put on the back burner, and we have allowed so much chaos to ensue in so many other parts of our lives. But when it comes to squatters' rights, honest to God, I thought that was just like a funny Family Guy thing that they said on like The Simpsons or Family Guy or whatever. I did not realize how powerful squatters' rights actually were until we started to see cases like he just mentioned in Connecticut, in these other vacation homes in New York City, where it's like people are gone or they rent it out for an Airbnb and they come back to clean it up or whatever the case may be. And people are posted up, living in there, eating the groceries, getting the government check and saying, I'm not going anywhere because I don't have to. Why is no one doing anything about this?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I think what the easy answer to that is because it wasn't that much of a thing until recently.
Yeah,
It's escalated now because you hear about it more and people go get the bright idea and go, here it worked for somebody else, so I'll do it now. Or I'll do it as well. I mean, I think you can trace some of it back to the fact that over the past decade and a half or so, there's been this big push to not hold people accountable for breaking the law if it's something that's the equivalent of like, stealing from stores and that sort of thing. There's this mentality that people are just they're desperate, so they need compassion instead of accountability. And then COVID, I think, caused a whole lot of that to accelerate at an exponential rate because remember for months, even years, like landlords couldn't enforce their leases with their tenants.
Yes.
You couldn't evict somebody because it was like an exigent circumstance. And so people had to go for years without collecting rents on the property that they owned. And I think it's just kind of all snowballed. But bottom line is, if you live in a jurisdiction where people don't want law enforcement to be involved if someone steals less than $1,000, they don't want to be involved if someone's sitting in your house. They don't, I mean, and it is evicting someone is a lengthy process. Well, in some respects, that's good. You don't want people to be able to get kicked out of their homes just willy-nilly. But it's swung so far that direction that the people that are the property owners now are getting, stuck.
Yeah, you brought up a great point. I feel like COVID, it's so insane because there are so many people, even in 2020, that were pointing out how much mental illness will be such an issue and the repercussions from COVID and what we didn't do for mental illness during that time. I think you're absolutely right. Not only were people saying, I don't have to pay my rent and I'm not going anywhere and you can't do anything about it, there was also a huge push because people lost their jobs. So then these very independent people that did have a paycheck, that were doing the right things, that were working and providing and whatever the case may be, now lost their job because everything was shut down. Couldn't get their job back, then probably got into legal issues and legal battles because of COVID with their former employer. And it just escalates from there. They have no money. They can't pay for anything anyway. And then pile on top of that hot mess that now obviously we have data, thanks Dr. Fauci, we have data that literally leads back to how damaging COVID actually was. Before COVID, AOC was saying the rioters can steal whatever they want from that QT and burn it down because they're just trying to get a loaf of bread.
Right.
The rioters can go to that Schnucks and break in and steal whatever they want because they deserve to. They don't have enough money to go and get the zucchini or get the onion. They need to do those things to survive. And it comes from that ripple effect, again, going back to a Democrat ideology that allows this kind of entitlement and says, I don't need to do anything. I can just exist the way I want to exist. I don't have to earn anything. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to be part of anything. This Airbnb that you've been posting up is mine now because I say so. But what breaks that chain?
Well, measures like the one they passed in Florida,
right,
designed to address that issue, that authorizes law enforcement and kind of like takes the shackles off of them and allows them to actually proactively help nip this in the bud. That's going to help. It's not going to be an immediate thing, but it's going to help. And I guarantee Tennessee, other states in the particularly states in the South, but I think you're going to see other states following suit. Texas will probably do this. I'd like to think Missouri might do it.
I hope. We've been spearheading a lot of things, so I hope so.
So you'd like to see that. But yeah, I mean, you'll see other states follow suit and they'll start being a trend in that. But it's a process. I mean, we didn't get here overnight. We're not going to fix things overnight. There's so much that has to be fixed. But it is sort of it all kind of is an outgrowth of the entitlement mentality, I'm a victim of an oppressive system, therefore anything I do is justified because I I didn't get a fair shake to start.
It's kind of crazy because as you read on to this article, it says squatters in states like New York and California have become a months-long headache for some excuse me, homeowners. But it can be costly for those homeowners, starting with $300 of a filing fee and then generally expensive legal repercussions. So, Susie, is that also why people are like, well, okay, yeah, they're living in my house, but like, no, the legal fee is going to be insane to try to get them out of here. Like, maybe I just don't have the money. Maybe I don't have the time to battle the legal system now to try to get these people out.
Yeah. I mean, it can be cost prohibitive. It can be, there's a whole lot of, the court system, the judicial system is set up in a way to work deliberately and not instantaneously. And that's for good reason. You want decisions that have to do with people's legal rights and stuff. You want those to be deliberate decisions, not just knee jerk.
Mm-hmm.
But because of that, it's a process, and the process can take cost, time, and money, as you pointed out. And not everybody has the wherewithal to be able to afford that. So then you end up with people that don't have any other option. And if they can't get backup from law enforcement, even to get the stranger out of their house,
Yeah.
what are they going to do?
So this is all stemming from, I believe, an administration right now that we have in the White House that is the highest power of the United States, that will not do anything about crime. They won't do anything about violence. They won't do anything that empowers law enforcement, despite what Joe Biden said on the debate stage, that he has so many people, law enforcement unions, and all these people are supporting him. Yeah, give me a break. Just like you had a cold that night.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to take a turn to the Bidens, because this administration is broken. They're not doing anything that's really helping anyone in America, except for if you have a college loan that miraculously was now that has disappeared. But we're seeing a shift right now, Susie, in a lot of other Democrats realizing this is a broken party. These are broken people. And this is coming from a billionaire Democrat donor, Bill Ackman, who is now ripping into Joe Biden for making Joe, according to him, stay in this race. And I do believe that. I think Jill is the mastermind. Do you agree? I think Jill is the mastermind behind Joe Biden, keeping it pushing, keeping it moving.
It's kind of hard not to have that impression at this point, because she does seem to be the one that's sort of like his chief handler, if you will, and she's the one who's like speaking on his behalf and I think her role has probably increased as his abilities have decreased.
Yes. That's a great way to
But
put that.
the big discussion over the weekend was whether he was going to be holed up with his family, having a discussion, reevaluating that sort of thing. And I think she is a driving force of that. And whether it's because she's power hungry or she just doesn't want to see him give up, the bottom line is it's not doing a service for him, and it's not doing a service for the country.
It isn't. And so many people, I think, are recognizing that now, especially after this weekend when she was the primary person campaigning and he was kind of in the background just looking around like, what are we doing here? So billionaire Bill Ackman says he reportedly has donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to Barack Obama, Chuck Schumer, Pete Buttigieg, is now blasting First Lady Jill Biden for her apparent refusal to consider her husband stepping down. After President Joe Biden's disastrous performance, I'm reading this from the Daily Wire, by the way, everybody. Joe Biden's disastrous performance at the debate with former President Trump on Thursday, numerous Democrats called for Biden to step aside so someone else could enter the race. But Jill Biden fiercely claimed her husband would keep running. This is from the Vogue report, the big Vogue cover. The debate on June 27th spurred a discussion about whether President Joe Biden should remain as the Democratic nominee. Dr. Jill Biden, the First Lady and Vogue's August cover subject, has fiercely defended her husband and stood by him. Reached by phone on June 30th at Camp David, where the Biden family had gathered for the weekend, she told Vogue that they will not let those 90 minutes define the 4 years he's been as president. To this, Ackman replied, "I no longer blame POTUS for not stepping aside." He wrote this on X. He no longer has the mental acuity to make important judgments about himself. It is becoming increasingly clear, however, that the false lies FLOTUS, Jill Biden has said, have become very relevant. Jill Biden, becomes irrelevant the moment her husband is no longer president. No more Air Force One, no more glamorous life, no more White House dinners for her dignitaries, no more being treated like a queen when traveling the world. I honestly, Susie, could not agree more. I can't believe a Democrat saying this, especially one that's so wealthy and funding all of the other Democrats that he believed in. But it seems to me that Joe Biden is power hungry. Joe Biden has always wanted to be in this position. There's no doubt about that. But I look at this and I look at Jill and I am like, I think this is true. I don't think she wants to give up her queenhood.
Yeah, I mean that seems to be what would be driving it. As I said, it's either her own power hunger or her not wanting to see her husband, basically, because if he steps back, that's kind of like admitting a failure.
Yeah.
So that could be a part of it too. Ackman, I think, has broken with the Bidens since October 7th. He's been one of the strongest voices critical of the administration and the way it's handled Israel and then all the
Wow.
pro-Hamas protests. He was one of the ones that was calling for the presidents of the universities to step down.
Oh, right.
Right.
Okay.
So I
forgot
think
about that.
maybe this kind of all goes hand in hand. But I will say this, without disclosing anybody's confidences, since Thursday night, I've been approached by at least 10 people who have brought up the debate to me. I have not brought it up to anybody. And to a person, most of those people, by the way, happen to be Democrats. To a person, they are like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. Oh, wow. And most of them aren't going to turn around and vote for Donald Trump. So don't get me
Sure.
wrong. But that's the reaction they're having. Some of them were shocked because they only got their news and their information from sources that really kind of ran cover. And so this was their first real introduction to how bad it's gotten.
Pulling back the curtain.
Yeah.
Were you also surprised at their surprise? Were you like, wow, I can't believe that they're admitting this? Or was it like, yeah, guys, this has been going on for a minute?
I'm not surprised at their surprise, just knowing, if they're limited in terms of not they're limited. If their information consumption is limited to certain outlets, I'm not surprised because then they've kind of been in a little bit of a bubble about it. I watch the guy every day. We write on him every day. I was surprised by how bad he was out of the gate. Like within the first 30 seconds, I was like, oh my gosh. I
This
was
is bad.
flabbergasted because I was expecting State of the Union Joe to show up.
Yeah.
So I thought he'd be like a little wonky, a little off. He'd say some goofy things or whatever, but I was expecting that person. And instead what we got was, 2 minutes of like speed rehearsal, whatever that was, it wasn't even really registering what he was saying. And then he was really off. And I was like, wow, they did not get this combination of whatever they needed to do to prepare him. They didn't get it right.
That voice too. The voice was so
very strained.
Yes, it was very strained and it was so off-putting to hear him with so much low energy and the raspiness of his voice. All of that was just like, I cannot believe they put him on this debate stage. I also didn't realize until after their debate, he had a full week of debate prep.
Oh yeah, 7 full days that he was at Camp David. Hold up. There was nothing going on.
Doing debate prep. And this is what happened after 7 days. I don't think any president has had that much time, at least not to my knowledge.
No.
Any president has ever done that much debate prep.
No.
Before something like this. It
No.
just, man, Susie, that debate was like shocking. I can see why Democrats that trust you and you have a good relationship with, that they felt like, hey, I can confide in you something crazy like this. Like, oh my gosh. But it's so telling to know that this might have been their first glance.
Yeah.
At what Joe Biden is actually experiencing, what he's actually going through. Wow. That is crazy. We're going to be speaking to our friend Virginia Kruta from the Daily Wire next. She has a couple of funny articles written about the View's reaction. Supposedly they're in mourning after the debate. They're heartbroken.
Aww.
They're crestfallen. They can't believe it.
Poor
So we're going
gal.
to talk to Virginia Kruta about that next. You are listening to Colombo and Katie on 1019 94.1 News Talk STL.
You're listening to Colombo and Katie.
As President Lincoln said,
Face down in the desert now. There's a cage locked around my heart.
The tides are changing.
St. Louis's new choice for conservative talk.
The Democratic Party doesn't stand with what I stand for.
News Talk STL. Hit the links in style this season with News Talk STL's brand new golf polo and hat collection. Available exclusively at Sugar Creek Golf Course, located off Highway 30 in High Ridge. Our lightweight, moisture-wicking polos feature the News Talk STL logo, keeping you looking sharp and feeling comfortable all 18 holes. And don't forget the matching News Talk STL hats to keep the sun out of your eyes while you line up that winning putt. Get your News Talk STL gear today at Sugar Creek Golf Course off Highway 30 in High Ridge. This is Larry Connor's commentary on News Talk STL.
NBA star LeBron James is worth $1.2 billion. So he has money, and he also has heart. In 2018, he opened a school in his hometown of Akron, Ohio, giving back to his community. He put up $2 million to open this school for third and fourth graders, and pledging $2 million or more each year to that school called I Promise. And he put in personal time. Now, this school was to help elementary students who did not do well in school. They had longer days at this school, plus school during the summer, all to help them retain what they learned. It grew from just third and fourth grades to have first through eighth grades. So, how are the students doing? Well, in its first year, 90% of the third and fourth grade students did pass Ohio basic math and reading test. That was 2019. But since that time, none, not one eighth grader has passed the state basic math and reading test since 2019. The school mission, nothing is given. Everything is earned. Such a shame.
Get more Larry Connors on Larry Connors USA.
Tonight at 6 on News Talk STL.
If you haven't been to Lit Cigar Lounge in the district at Chesterfield, you're missing a great experience. Premium cigars, drinks, spacious seating, TVs in every direction. This and more explain why Lit was voted Best Cigar Lounge 2 years in a row. Now you can be at Lit and order Napoli Brothers pizza and pasta delivered to you. In fact, Napoli's just a few doors down. A coal-fired oven giving a unique taste. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, now open in the Chesterfield district.
Dreaming of upgrading your outdoor space? STL Fenceworks is the choice for you. Our skilled craftsmen build custom fences from modern vinyl to classic ornamental, fitting your style and budget. Elevate your outdoor living with low-maintenance decks designed to relax and entertain. We choose only top-quality American-made materials, ensuring your project is built to last. Your satisfaction is our passion. With over 50 years of experience, custom designs, and exceptional customer service, visit stlfenceworks.com today.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
Speaking of Levi Hart at Thrive, Give STL Day, I get a call from the office because someone had called in. I must have Googled this, found just our office phone, and had given $10,000. Wow. Between being alive with you guys, walking out to my car. So News Talk STL listeners, you're the reason why the babies had the loudest voice in the city. Radio does work.
Radio works.
It does. Here we are.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps. Weekdays at 4 on News Talk STL. Mike Ferguson in the morning.
The Supreme Court rules Donald Trump has absolute immunity for that, and kind of sort of for that, but definitely not for that. We'll explain on Tuesday.
Mornings starting at 5:30 on News Talk STL. You're listening to Colombo and Katie.
Oh, the erectionists and storm Capitol Hill Patriots. Say hello to oyster bunnies. Come on up, bunnies.
Waiting for the
Did you know, Susie, that Biden said erectionists instead of insurrectionists?
And was it Rashida Tlaib did that too, I think.
She
that and the
did.
Oyster Bunny.
The Oyster Bunny and Chuck Schumer and Pelosi. Ken has all of these guts of people saying erection instead of
Why
insurrection.
are their minds in the gutter? My word.
Dirty people. It just, I will say, Trump is going to have a lot of funny things that he already has some funny things that we play.
Mm-hmm.
And if he is the next president, there'll be a lot of funny things that we're going to be able to grab.
Mm-hmm.
But Joe Biden is just a gold mine.
Yes.
For things that are just like, what in the hell did he just say? What is this? And those are things that I will miss.
Yeah.
Just like I miss some of Jen Psaki's, and just like I will miss some of Corinne Jean-Pierre's, although that'll be a pleasant day when she's not there. Thank you guys so much for joining us. You are listening to Colombo and Katie on 1019 94.1 News Talk STL. I am Katie Fitzpatrick. Red State's Susie Moore is in studio with me. Tony Colombo is out. He is on a family vacation to Disney. He's out again tomorrow as well, but he will be back here Wednesday for my last day at the radio station. So we do get a show together before I hit the road, Jack, and I'm so grateful to have that time with him before we go. Thank you guys also for watching us on our live streams. Thank you guys for commenting. I appreciate it so much. I see everybody on here: Amy, Frank, Linda, Mike, so many others listening and watching and commenting. It means the world to us when we can look up and we see that you guys are here with us on our live stream. And don't forget, you can listen to us on 94.1 or 101.9, but your phone is also a radio. So download that app. You can hear us crystal clear wherever you are and take us with you on the go. Right now, we are speaking with our friend, Virginia Kruta from the Daily Wire. Virginia, thank you so much for being on with me and Susie today and being flexible as well. This is not your usual time with us.
No, and I wanted to make sure that I got a show before you left.
Absolutely.
That was one. And but I was listening. Actually, my phone was my radio. I was listening as I was driving through Alabama. I was on my way to my sister's house, and I'm like, wait a minute, why are they talking about a Supreme Court case that happened last week? And then I'm texting Katie, why are we listening to last Thursday?
They were gremlins. They were gremlins at work.
They were working. They were trying to see. They were saying, we don't want Susie and we don't want Katie to host the show
They
together.
were trying to sabotage the all-girl show just to see if they could get the best of us. And
They
didn't.
were.
They lost.
Damn
They
them.
failed.
They failed. They lost.
Right?
Just like, unfortunately, Joe Biden on that debate stage. The gremlins are never Susie. I mean, not Susie, Virginia, but also Susie.
Yeah.
You have two articles that I want to talk to you about, Virginia.
Okay.
And one of them is a former Biden aide saying that the Dems defending Biden is total gaslighting. This is an article that you wrote recently. I have to know, we were just talking right before the break. So many Democrats now are saying, oh my gosh, this is a total train wreck. But this is someone close to the Bidens, a former Biden aide. Can you tell us a little bit about this person, the article, what they said, how the whole shebang is going down?
Okay, so this guy actually was a former press secretary to Jill Biden.
Oh, wow.
So he was very close to the family. And he was responding to comments made by Kate Bedingfield, who is former communications director at the White House. And Bedingfield is like, well, the data doesn't bear it out. We realized that the debate didn't look good, but the data shows us that, there's not going to be much change going into the election. And he's like, holy crap, what data? Show it to us.
Right.
Like, what data? What are you looking at? And what I think is really funny, and the amount of spin that is going on here, I'm sure you've seen, but Politico actually wrote a story about the response to the debate. And they said, Donald Trump's position hasn't improved much except with votes.
Other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play?
Isn't that the important stuff right now? Like, maybe I'm wrong here, but they're like, well, people still think he's a crook. Well, people think Joe Biden's a crook too.
Yeah.
And people think that, so there is a whole lot going on. But yeah, the whole thing was, he was frustrated with Kate Bedingfield, like, hey, you have to know better. And my response, I actually sent to some of the people that I work with during the debate. I'm like, the people who are around Joe Biden every day, they knew he was this bad, and they let him get up on that stage anyway.
Yes.
So did they do it on purpose? Was this intentional sabotage, or did they just think, well, Trump's going to be worse?
Good
because
question.
I mean, it could go either way.
Right. It might be even a mix of that. Virginia, I'm with you on that. I mean, the people that deal with him every day obviously know what's going on, and they've seen his low points as well as the high points,
Right.
or whatever those are. it does seem like there are these vying factions within the Democratic Party at this point. There's like
Right.
the Obama faction and the Clinton faction, kind of the holdovers from each of those, and then there's the Biden family faction. And
Right.
what's your sense? Like, who do you think's going to win out?
Well, and I mean, we've talked about this before. The only way to really get rid of Joe Biden prior to there are two ways to get rid of if they were going to get him out prior to the convention. One, they 25th Amendment him out of the presidency right now.
Mm-hmm.
And two, they convince him that it's in the country's best interest to bow out willingly. And whether or not they do, but then the problem either way is that they are stuck with Kamala.
Yes. Yes.
So what do they do with her? And then I know Jen Van Laar wrote about it at Red State, talking about the fact that, Kamala Harris was made in the machine that Nancy Pelosi built in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
So what does Nancy Pelosi have on Kamala? And what could she use to say, hey, it's not. Now, I think that there's an easier way to get rid of Kamala Harris, and that other than the obvious, like have Nancy Pelosi threaten her with whatever.
Right.
But I think
Blackmail.
that the way they need, if they were going to do it, the only way, the independents and the moderates are always who decides the election.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of know this because left is going to vote left and right is going to vote right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the people in the middle who go either way depending on specific issues or people that they like or dislike, and however that plays out. But so if you have these people in the middle, and how do you get them? A lot of them are leaning toward Trump because he is being persecuted. They see him as being politically persecuted by, people connected with Biden, and so they're angry with the Biden administration, very specifically the Biden administration. And the DNC could tell Kamala, hey, look, the only way we win is if we put distance on this administration, because they can bring in somebody who says, well, I would never have done that. I was not in favor of the lawfare, and I would have, like, the court should do what the court does, and my Justice Department would have nothing to do with that. And depending on how credible they were, it could work.
Man.
But Kamala Harris can't say that because she was part of this administration.
Right.
Whether she had anything to do with the decision-making process at all doesn't matter.
But the stink is on her.
She's connected. Exactly.
And this is
so you
where
have that.
Go ahead, Drew.
But then it also gives, if the DNC unilaterally replaces Biden, that also gives Trump an advantage that people aren't really talking about, because he can go to the next debate and say, well, the DNC knew that Biden was in trouble, and they let him come out on this stage anyway. And you saw what happened. When they didn't like what he did, they just got rid of him. I wonder who they'll replace you with.
Right. No, I think that's completely correct. I think on Friday, whenever Ken was in here with us too, he was like, well, they could definitely just replace Biden. And I understand that, but how badly, Virginia, does that also look for a weak campaign and a weak party? I mean, we have people turning on this president and turning on this White House that have been diehard Democrats since day one. Now, granted, you could probably say the same thing about people and the way they felt about Trump, possibly in 2016 and again in 2020. Okay, I understand that. But you just said, Virginia, they have to try to convince the moderates. They have to try to convince the independents to believe in Joe Biden, believe in their cause. How do they do that, Virginia, when Democrats one by one are saying, I don't even believe in this guy?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that's why Obama came out as early as he did with what he said. When he said, hey, we've all had bad nights, it's just a bad debate, whatever. Watch clips of the Sunday shows and see what every single Democrat said. Because Obama said that on Friday, and every single Democrat, to a man, was like, well, I don't think we should judge his presidency on one bad debate. Nancy Pelosi was like, well, 72% don't think that Joe Biden's capable of running the country, but what about the other guy? How many people think that he has the integrity to run the company? She changed the question because she knew that the answer might be different. Because obviously the poll said more people believe Trump was capable of running the country.
Right. Virginia,
But-
thank you so much for being on with us. We are actually out of time. And I did want to tell you, if you guys want to if you want to read one of her articles on the Daily Wire, I highly suggest reading The View hosts in morning after disastrous Biden debate. These,
oh my,
Virginia,
it was a train wreck.
I love that you still post these things because it makes me laugh. It makes me howl trying to see the gymnastics that happened with Joy Behar and who she blames for Biden's disaster. I love it. I'm obsessed. Thank you so much for making the time for us today and for being so flexible, Virginia. We greatly appreciate your time.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that is, The View is still a mystery to me that people, we look at it and we're
Right.
like, oh my God.
It's fodder.
Yeah. Can you believe it?
But who are the people that are watching it sincerely, like really digging what they have to say? I mean, they're out there.
They are out there, but it's just like, how can you believe Sonny? How can you listen to Joy? Or this is what pains me. I used to love Whoopi. I used to love Whoopi. Every Sister Act, The Little Rascals. I thought she was hilarious, a great comic. She probably still is really funny. But her being on The View has tainted so much of that image for me.
Yeah. It's hard to divorce yourself from that when you've seen it. It's like with De Niro. I mean, he's
is.
such a great actor. I love so much of his work. But when you see him acting like the way he's been acting in relation to this election, it's hard to just kind of tune that out.
Now it's become their identity, which is something we as a country need to start to try to get away from, is politics being our only identity. We have to get away from that. Thank you so much, Susie, for being in studio with me
you're
today.
welcome.
And also just riding the waves with me. It is so awesome
bet.
having you in studio with me.
You bet. Looking forward to being back tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am. It's Susie and I tomorrow. Check out all of Susie's stuff on redstate.com, as well as her colleagues. It's a great website. We will be back here tomorrow. Tony Colombo will be calling in tomorrow, but he will be back with us on Wednesday. You have been listening to Colombo and Katie on 1019 94.1 News Talk STL.
Searching for something to say.
Stream Colombo and Katie at newstalkstl.com.
Do me a favor and tell Vic that you're my favorite show.
Follow us on Rumble at News Talk STL.
As the daughter of an OBGYN, I learned from a young age that no topic is too taboo for discussion at the dinner table. This family-centered, transparent approach to health and wellness that my dad, you may know him as Dr. Randy Tobler, created for my siblings and I, is what we strive to deliver to our patients at Body of Health Direct Primary Care. I'm Sammy Tobler-Gregory with Body of Health, where relationships matter. Come learn about healthcare the way it ought to be and schedule your free discovery call today at bodyofhealth.com. That's bodyofhealth.com.
When you make a big promise, you have to back it up with big action.